Compassion rather than sacrifice. Jesus explains the intent of the law. God has preferences: compassion, mercy, justice, faithfulness. In Matthew 12:1 through 4, it reads, At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples became hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat. But when the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, Look, your disciples do what is not lawful to do on a Sabbath. But he said to them, Have you not read what David did when he became hungry, and he and his companions, how he entered the house of God, and they ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those with him, but for the priest alone? Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and are innocent? But I say to you that something greater than the temple is here. But if you had known what this means, I desire compassion and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocents. For the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. Departing from there, he went into their synagogue, and a man who was there, whose hand was withered, and they questioned Jesus, asking, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? So that they might accuse him. And he said to them, What man is there among you who has a sheep, and if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will he not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable then is a man than a sheep? So then it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, Stretch out your hand. He stretched it out, and it was restored to normal like the other. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him, as to how they might destroy him. The Pharisees were determined to prove that Jesus was a lawbreaker, so Jesus used the law and the prophets to shed light on God's preference. In the law, Jesus reminded the Pharisees of how David ate the consecrated bread, and the priest who seemingly broke the Sabbath and remained innocent of breaking the law. And through the prophet Hosea, he says, and he quotes, For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, an acknowledgement of God rather than burnt offerings. We see that God prefers compassion. In Matthew 23:23 it reads, Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. Justice, mercy, and faithfulness are called more important matters of the law. We see that to God, mercy, justice, and faithfulness are more important than many of the numerous other requirements of the law. The law is dependent on love. In Matthew 22:36 through 40, Jesus is asked, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. By healing a man on the Sabbath and angering the advocates of the law, who, according to Paul in Romans 10:1 through 4, had attempted to establish their own form of righteousness and did not subject themselves to the righteousness of God, Jesus showed us how the law is dependent on love. He told the crowd that ultimately it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. So just as David and the priests were innocent of breaking the law of the Sabbath, it was lawful to heal a man on the Sabbath. This is why it is important to understand how love and the law work together and are not independent of each other. The law cannot be viewed unless it's viewed through the lens of love of God first. Christians in the law today. We are all subject to the laws in the country that we live in. Many of us have the ability to impact how laws are shaped by voting and advocacy. Our perspective should be influenced by mercy, compassion, justice, and faithfulness. Our perspectives should not be influenced by skin color, language, gender, nationalism or nationality, economics, or any of the laws of men or cultural traditions or anything that cause division between us. As believers and as followers of Christ, we can't be ambivalent to this whole thing. In a world full of social media, water cooler conversations, and discussions with family and friends, we must make certain that our words and action reflect love. Love for God, love for our neighbors, and love for each other. As God is full of compassion, mercy, justice, and faithfulness, so should we be also.